Josh, did we get? Okay, cool. Stan, you're up.
Okay, give me a minute here to get situated. While I'm pulling things up, I just want to pass on to everyone that there was a fatality on site today, not work-related. It was a Bonneville Power Administration employee, and apparently the employee had some, I'll read the notification, BPA employee stopped breathing. Hanford Fire Department responded. CPR was started on the employee and continued by Hanford Fire Department. They called for life flight and transported the individual to the road for life flight to meet up with them. The coroner was asked to come to the scene thereafter, so it appears to be non-work related, and just want to let everyone know that. So.
No, that's too bad. That's
Yeah,
really bad.
Oh.
So we're running around taking care of a few things associated with that. So I'll have to drop off here in a minute. So let me.
Well, we have Gary on, so we're okay there. Do you need to just say that we're operating under FACA and?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
So good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the March 2022 Hanford Advisory Board BCC Committee meeting. My name is Stan Branch. I'm the Deputy Designated Federal Officer for the Hanford site. As a reminder, this meeting will be conducted in accordance with the requirements of the Federal Advisory Committee Act. Advisory committees have played an important role in shaping programs and policies of the federal government. The Hanford Advisory Board Hanford Advisory Board roles provides policy level advice and recommendations concerning the following EM-specific, site-specific issues such as cleanup activities, environmental restoration, waste and nuclear materials management and disposition, excess facilities, future land use and long-term stewardship, risk management, and communications. I appreciate your attendance today and look forward to the HAB BCC Committee development and submission of constructive, actionable policy level advice on the Hanford cleanup. Thank you and welcome. Back to you, Ruth.
Great. So today's meeting, I believe, has a single purpose. Tom Galeotto, why don't you let us know what we need to do and we'll get on with it.
Very good. Well, the first purpose is to have some fun and enjoy the task at hand. I think that's first. But the second is to look over, review one more time the final draft of the cleanup fiscal 24 priorities for cleanup, and to approve that advice so that it can go on to Ruth and the facilitation team to distribute to the full HAB next week for review and hopefully approval through the HAB in our March meeting. So you've seen this once before, the version, you've seen it at least one version before this one before you today during committee week, where we reviewed it for about an hour and a half. We had some great comments, and those comments were incorporated along with the other comments that we received during committee week from Tank Waste Committee and the RAP and the PIC. And we had a few other comments on when the IM team met after committee week that are also incorporated into this version. The IM team has approved it. There is one change from that version, which I'll discuss with you here today, but the people that were directly involved on the IM team with that item have accepted that change. So I think we're okay with the IM approval coming to you for the final sponsoring committee approval today. But this is to go over it with you, let you know where we ended up with this document, and any final comments that you might have, we can take a look at now and see if we can't incorporate it. Any questions about the goal today? The goal is to complete our review in the next, 50 minutes or so, and also grant approval from the committee to go forward with it. So I'll point out as we go through this, and we'll go through it generally paragraph by paragraph fairly quickly on the background section, because I think you've already seen that. There's not many changes that have occurred since you saw it last. And we'll go through that, but I'd like to spend a little more time on the items themselves in the table. So Ruth, let's move down a little to the text. Yeah, the first couple paragraphs there really were not changed. This is general background, and the beginning of the second paragraph there, following through on the top of the next page that you see, is basically just to say this is similar in format to what we presented last year in our advice. And so there's no major change in format and major change in approach. It's pretty much the same format that we used before. Yeah, thank you. The 3 bullets there you see, again, just very briefly, these are the same categories that DOE uses for the 5-year plan, the most recent 5-year plan draft that we saw in October last year, and that's still the current one. These are the categories that DOE used, and we stuck with those 3 categories. We did add an additional category, as we did last year, but we changed the title. Last year it was, I believe, called cross-cutting activities. We thought a better title for that was really indirect and supporting activities. The whole advice is really cross-cutting advice, so we kind of got away from the cross-cutting terminology and identified it as indirect and supporting activities instead. Also, the 2 categories of prioritization of the activities for cleanup, critical and important, are the same, and in fact the words are the same that we used last year to identify the various items in the table. There is one change since you saw it last, and that's in this paragraph right before the advice starts. We had 3 bullets there before. We decided in the IM team that the second bullet was really repetitive with the first, with the beginning of the advice section. We also mentioned in the advice section that the same topic as the second bullet. So basically we boiled this down to 2 bullets. We decided the whole paragraph with the 2 bullets says that although we considered broadening the scope of this advice to the 5-year period that DOE uses for their 5-year plan, that we decided to keep with the past practice of focusing on the formulation year cleanup activities. That's fiscal year +2. So in this case, it's fiscal 2024 instead of the broadened 5-year period of time. And the reasons are not changed in the first and second bullet. Second bullet is really the key thing, key item. This approach would seem to lessen this approach, meaning the broadening of the scope to be 5 years, which was not accepted. That approach would seem to lessen the focus on DOE to complete the cleanup activities as planned on a fiscal by fiscal year basis. So again, you've seen this, you've heard the discussion. I don't think there's a change there substantively that will affect us today. Before we get into the advice, any further questions on the background section? Okay, you can bring them up if you have any that come to mind. The item, the first paragraph basically says that these are the cleanup activities that the HAB identifies as priorities for fiscal 2024. The second sentence there, it says note that the activities, that sentence, continuing on to the next page, is is where we say if items were planned on being finished before fiscal 2024, they're not included in this table. So if those weren't finished for various reasons, COVID or others, then we expect those items that weren't finished to be added to the table as priority items to be done. But we have had to assume that all of those activities were completed, and we're working on the latest version of the 5-year plan that DOE sees as being active and accurate. The second paragraph there on that page talks about MinSafe and critical maintenance activities, and the fact that DOE identifies those in some detail on the 5-year plan. We chose not to identify such things as fixing an electrical tie line in a certain area of the facility, even though that's important to do so that the utilities are continuing for that area so that actual cleanup work can be done. We're identifying that, yes, we admit and agree to the critical maintenance and infrastructure type activities as needing to be done in order to support all of the cleanup activities. So those are prioritized in addition to whatever we have listed in our table. We have added a couple sentences or a couple phrases here. The beginning about a third of the way down with the sentence, the board assumes that they include activities necessary for assuring personnel safety. That's it. The safe storage of tank waste and the tank integrity program, and establishing and maintaining the operational status of the 242A evaporator. We added the phrase assuring personnel safety and maintaining the operational status of the evaporator here because those are basic, needed to be done, broad scope activities like the infrastructure and the critical maintenance activities that fit into this program. So we in essence, we have one other item in the table that talks about safety, but we wanted to put the general umbrella of personnel safety in the forefront of DOE, and we know that they are focused on that constantly. So that's why it's there, and we'll see how it shows up also later in the table. The last paragraph in that section before the table talks about the request for each of the TPA agencies to respond with the position of whether the organization will or not support these specific activities. Very often we don't have a feel, due to DOE's response to us, which in many cases is generalized, we don't have a feel for whether or not the specific items that we're talking about have been supported or not supported. And we'd like that same thing from ecology and EPA to respond to as well. So again, we're highlighting that as a request for input from all three agencies. The notes below the table heading there are not changed in terms of how we identified the item with a letter designation as opposed to a number to avoid the concept of it being a specific list of numbered priorities. And then we have an acronym list at the end as we did last year. So looking down at this, the first four items there, as you see, are tank waste related in that category. DF law, we may have massaged the words a bit after the committee week. I can't recall the specific change, but it's pretty much the same as you've seen. Operate law, DF law, and increase throughput to reach full capacity. That's the goal because operation is supposed to be started in fiscal 2023. So that's why the wording is more focused on increasing throughput to reach full capacity there. It's probably the most critical item in our list that we're showing. The next two items, TWB, TWC, are also critical. We don't show the note here, which the IM team agreed to put in because we can't take action on that until the full HAB meets and discusses a related advice item. That advice item is the tank waste, the tank leak advice that the Tank Waste Committee is putting forward in front of the board in March as well. We want to make sure that the wording of our TWB and TWC items end up to be consistent with whatever is passed through the board for that tank leak advice in March. Right now, they are consistent with the draft that's going forward to the full HAB committee, the full HAB board. But if any change occurs, we'll want to make sure that we try to adjust the words of these two items to match that. We want to be consistent with that advice. But this basically, it says for the single shell tank, the TWB, complete the plan to address the process to be followed for the tank leaks. One of the advice items in the tank leak advice is in fact identification of a process to detect and mitigate any tank leakage. So the words here are still consistent currently. We want to make sure they stay that way. Also, the leaking single shell tank retrieval. This is pretty broad. Initiate retrieval activities for those tanks known to be leaking. So again, there's not much of a change from what you saw before during committee week, but there is a phantom note that you don't see on those two items that the IM team will want to make sure that those words are consistent with that other advice. TWD, the single shell tank retrieval, these words come directly out of and are consistent with the DOE 5-year plan, but they are important. And we're not critical in our view, but important. And we want to make sure that that the retrieval is done per the schedule. Any questions on those first four? Okay, Ruth, we can move down, see the next batch. Let's end up, yeah, the last four in the tank waste area are all important priority level categories. WTP is worded such that we want to make sure the work continues so that it meets the milestones that have been agreed to. Currently, I think that's full operation of the high-level waste facility by 2036, which is, you know, it seems like an awful long time in the future, but we want to make sure that we are continuing activities that are going to support that date. Otherwise, if we lose focus now, we'll lose focus on being able to meet that date as well. The East-West transfer line, we want to complete activities needed for the 200 area tank waste transfer line and get that into service. Initially, it's only important because it's not necessarily needed for the initial glassification work, but it is needed once we pull in the other tank farm. So we want to again keep focus on that activity to make sure it's finished. Tank vapors is one we talked about quite a bit in the IM team. We question whether we should leave it in or keep it out, and ultimately, based on some comments, particularly from the H subcommittee representative, we decided to keep it in and word it as continue the engineered vapor exposure controls for tank farm areas. We are not, as a group, as a board, we are not aware of any recent activities that the vapors have caused an issue for. But we wanted to keep the engineered vapor exposure controls in focus so that if in fact any are ongoing yet, we can in fact make those changes and keep the workers safe there. And our perennial favorite, TWH, additional tank storage. The wording is fairly similar to last year. And what we're doing, I know DOE has not been in the past supportive of this, because, and justifiably, for full disclosure, their interest is applying money to cleanup instead of applying that money or diverting money from cleanup to build new tanks when their planning doesn't show that they're needed. Our concern on the board has been we don't think they're going to be needed, but if in fact we have a significant tank leakage that causes us to transfer tank waste in a way that was not planned for, we may very well need another tank. So we're asking for at least completion of design and permitting in fiscal 2024 for a new tank, for an additional tank. I guess it doesn't have to be a new tank, but that was the intent here. It could be a refurbishment, I guess, if possible, of one of the existing tanks that have been emptied when we get to the point of having an emergency. So in any case, the design and permitting work, in our opinion, should be done. That's an important item. It's not critical, but it is important to us. Any questions on any of the tank waste items? Okay, hopefully you're still all awake. I apologize. Central Plateau cleanup. We've got a number of items in this area. In fact, as you see, there are 5 of them that are listed as critical. WESIF, first of all, we have a change to the, I'm sorry, it's the next one. On this one, it's not changed from what you saw before. Accelerate activities to complete the construction permitting and safely initiate and complete transfer of the capsules. This is an acceleration, and that's why it's mentioned that way, to the DOE 5-year plan, because the DOE is supposed to complete the transfer of capsules in fiscal 2025, according to the 5-year plan. We're asking for that by saying safely initiate and complete physical transfer of the capsules in 2024. This is an important item to us. It always has been, and we want to make sure that that happens as expeditiously as possible. The CPB item is the words you see here are the words that we ended the last IM meeting that approved this advice. However, there was an open item that we wanted to check with the individual from HSEP that suggested this item be added. Originally, this item was not into the table, but we did add the item. We had different wording in here when you saw it last, but when the IM team reviewed it, the HSEP person was not in attendance. They couldn't make it, but we did communicate to them afterwards, and we talked to the 2 or 3 people that had involvement and interest in this item on the IM team. And we would like now, based on those discussions, to change the words of that item. And the words, Ruth, if I could read those words to you in place of CP-B, would like to put this in. I'd like our BCC folks to look at that. Let me give those to you in a second. Okay, and I'm looking at another field on my computer, so I'm not seeing what you're typing, Ruth, but the title is the same, WESIF Basin Concrete Evaluation. And the wording is plan for testing on the basin walls after WESIF capsules are removed to evaluate concrete degradation following high activity exposure, period. There's another sentence.
Okay.
The results would provide essential data for future structural design calculations leading to enhanced safety design and potential cost savings, period.
So,
Okay, so that's the new wording that the HSEP rep and the other one other person on the AM team that had been involved with this item agreed that that's acceptable. If that's, please look at those new words, not the older words now, because that's a refinement and a better explanation of what we were trying to say in this item.
so for people who can see the screen, the new words are the bolded with the gray highlight, and the old words are just regular text, no highlight.
The purpose of this item was that it's thought that the basin that holds the current Westcliff capsule have high exposure to the concrete walls. And even though we haven't characterized the direct exposure and measured it against a control of concrete to get detailed data on the concrete performance, we can estimate the dose rate that the concrete has received, and that could go a long way in evaluating concrete under high exposure conditions. That's really the purpose of this. See if we can take advantage of that.
All right, committee, is the change okay with you? I have some feedback here.
Did you say you do have some feedback?
No, I was inviting feedback because I don't want to assume that silence is agreement. That's a really dangerous thing for a facilitator to do.
Yes. Yeah, please comment. Do you find the words for the BCC members particularly, do you find the words acceptable or not?
This is Chris. It's fine with me.
Okay.
Susan's good. I'm looking at the chat. It's okay if you type it in chat. That's communication.
Yeah,
okay, Emmett's okay.
Okay, unfortunately, I can't see the chat still, Ruth, but I'll take your word for it.
Now you have to trust me. That's even scary. Okay. I think we're all right. Chris is good. So I'm going to remove. I'm going to delete the old words.
Right.
And leave in the new words, and I'm going to not make them bold. Come on. There we go.
There you go. Good deal. Okay, thank you all.
So we're good.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. On the next item, pump and treat, that's not changed as I recall. I know there are several people on the IM team that are also on this call. Feel free to comment as we go if you have a different recollection of some of the word changes that we made on the IM team. Central Waste Complex. We did change the word in the IM team. This is not a change from what the IM team approved. It's the same. But these words say now set and meet TPA deadlines to bring all stored waste, indoors and outdoor storage, into compliance by characterizing, removing, treating, and packaging. I think some of this, some of the words here were generated from the committee week discussions with the various committees. So that's currently where it is. That's the final from the IM team. ERDF support, no change there. Off-site waste shipments. We discussed this.
1 minute, Zach.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, there you are.
Hi, it's Shelley. Hi, sorry, I had my hand up, but I don't know. I'm having trouble getting seen. back to the central waste complex, do we also want to talk about disposition of waste?
Disposition meaning ultimate shipments offsite, or?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Is
So we're not left with orphan waste.
is removing in that 4-piece, it says characterizing, removing, treating, and packaging, is removing in the right order of those 4 things, or they're 2 pieces of removal?
Well, that's a good question. I would think that removing should be probably moved after packaging.
Well, is
Shelley,
removing exhuming? Are we talking about digging it up?
No,
No.
no, it's not. I don't think it's that.
Okay. Well, then then it is in the wrong place, and yeah.
Or is the removing to be taken out of the container and then put into a position where it can be treated?
yeah, that's what I was asking. Like, are there 2 removing steps that are different from each other?
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, you characterize it, then you do transport it somewhere to then package it, and then, yeah, is the removing, that last removing supposed to be transport? Also
Yeah.
known as, or dispositioning?
Dispose.
Well, the disposal is for the true way, for the waste typically in the central waste complex, I think are going to be off-site, right?
Done
So
with?
So is it characterizing, removing, treating, packaging, and
off-site,
final disposal?
yeah, that's better.
Is that closer to, so we get both pieces of moving waste around?
Sure.
You should say of there, final disposal of waste. That sounds fair to me.
Thanks, Tom.
Sorry about that, Shelley. I'm working off of 2 screens and I missed it.
It's fine, Ruth.
Okay, we okay there, Ruth?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Okay, the narrative support item is not changed as from what you've seen before. The offsite waste shipments is where we have, it could be from Central Waste Complex, it could be from other sources.
Chris has his hand up. Chris?
Yeah, Tom, I want to go back to CWC again.
Okay,
Oops, sorry, Chris. I meant to put your hand down and I muted you. I'm sorry. My fault.
go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I want to go back to CWC again. Do we actually know what the TPA deadlines are? I mean, are they 2024? Are they way out in the future somewhere, or where?
Yeah, they're not in
We've
2024.
we've never said word one about what they are, or we've not heard word one about what they are.
Shelley probably knows this better than I, but my understanding is, like, for example, shipments to WIP are probably in the 2030 type time frame. Is that not right?
That is right. And there are a lot of staggered deadlines. And I don't have them all at hand or in my mind. So
Yeah, there may be others that are in preparation for that, Chris, before then, but we didn't get into the detail of specifics. We wanted to make sure that the TPA milestones were being used here as a guide to say this is what we have to hit.
Well, we're not going to meet those deadlines in 2024, which is what this work priority is for. So we maybe ought to say it a little different. So someone doesn't think we say we want to meet all these deadlines in 2024, because that's what the words say right now.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. If we said, instead of saying set and meet, if we said support, would that work? because we don't have to be saying we're going to meet a specific deadline in 2024. We're saying we have to support the work to do that.
That would be okay with me, yeah.
That's still okay with you, Shelley?
That works.
Okay. Okay, good point, guys.
Dan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in our last recollection, in the latest negotiations was that we're going to start moving true waste to WIP in 2024.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
think we really need to hold our feet to the fire on that, because WIP is filling up, and we could find ourselves with no place for that stuff to go if it fills up before we get our stuff off.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
they have done expansions. There is supposedly room. I kind of believe that they probably will continue to expand ERDF not ERDF. That's funny I said that. Expand as necessary. I'm not so worried about that right now.
There's
Because they were
physical
able
room there,
to
but
deadlines for
they'll
closure.
have to change the land withdrawal requirements in order to expand that facility, and there's a lot of resistance down there right now to doing that. And if they don't change the land withdrawal requirement, then WIP will fill up with other higher priority waste, such as surplus weapons, plutonium, and other true waste from remanufacturing warheads. And that's all in line ahead of us. So the sooner we get our stuff off the site and headed there, the better chance we have of getting rid of it, because I don't think that New Mexico is going to support an increase in the Land Withdrawal Act.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the words cover that, but we don't exactly know when that waste is going to be leaving the site now. There are some goals and deadlines, but they seem to always be changing. But I think the words themselves, though, support what we're saying.
You could say
Yes, I agree.
and deadlines.
Sorry, Shelley, one at a time. Let me hear what Shelley was saying.
Oh, I just suggested saying TPA agreements and deadlines.
Oh, okay, that's fair, because they may not be. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Okay, good. If we can move down to where do we leave that? The important, the CP-G cribs. These are words from, again, the 5-year plan. We feel that we'd like to keep the effort focused to keep going. We agree that activity is important. Okay, Ruth, we can move up a little. And the last 3 also are important for Central Plateau. The T&B plants, removal actions, begin removal actions of those plants. Characterization of waste. I'm almost positive that those words are directly from the 5-year plan as well. We didn't have any other source for those words than that, to my knowledge. And we did add the orphan waste item, the next item.
Thank you for that.
You bet. And let's look at the words, because I don't know that you've seen that. The BCC has seen those directly. Evaluate the generation and plan disposal of all Hanford waste streams being generated that do not have a clear disposition. And we mentioned 2 examples, the Tiscaray and exchange columns, and the German logs, which I was unfamiliar with, but one of the IMT members brought that to my attention too. So those 2 examples are given, and identify needed additional required funding to address them. Right now, there is no plan for handling those wastes, to our knowledge. So we wanted to highlight that that's important. Okay, if we can move on to the river corridor, we only have 4 items there. The 324 building obviously is still critical. We want to complete the prep activities and begin remediation of the soil, underlying soils, in fiscal 2024. That's an acceleration of what's in the 5-year plan. I think what's in the 5-year plan talked about installing the micropiles, as I recall, which before the soil is removed. In other words, we want that done. Of course, that has to be done first, plus then removal of the underlying soils.
Just for an FYI, Tom, that is, the micropiles are being done now, and they may actually be able to do less than they thought because they're structurally supporting better.
Oh, that's great. That would be
Yeah.
great news. Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's an important feature of completing this work for sure. Groundwater cleanup, we think that's a great program. It is a great program. It's made a huge difference in the inventory, radioactive inventory of the water, the wastewater. But we want to accelerate it, and it talks about accelerate remediation and groundwater cleanup through efficient optimization of extraction well networks and associated facilities. It's kind of generalized wording, but the idea here is it's important not only to continue that program, but also to grow it, if you will. And the last two items in the important category, complete the ROD for 100N and the 105K West Basin, begin demolition of that basin. I think those both are in the 5-year plan. It's consistent with the 5-year plan wording. Now, we did have some changes in the wording that in this indirect supporting activities section. We did some wordsmithing and for a number of things were changed, but the workforce, yeah, let's look at that. That's good for you. It's critical that workforce issues be addressed, and they include, we're looking at the first sentence. Some of the discussion centered around wanting a comprehensive plan from EPA, ecology, and the general public regarding the workforce issues. And those workforce issues are engage the workforce in planning and development, identify potential risks that require uninterrupted operations so that they can be prioritized, if you will, item B, sub-item B, that they can be prioritized to make sure that we have trained and adequate workforce to continue work to finish them. C, sub-item C, make tangible investments in next generation workforce. And we listed some examples, which some of which we may have had, but not all. Outreach efforts, career seminars, job fairs. One thing we did add was underutilized segments of the population. So we want DOE to make investments in accomplishing those stretch goals, if you will, to support the growth and the adequacy of the workforce in the future. D, assure workforce, the workforce necessary, assure that the workforce receives all necessary safety and job-related resources. We think that it does, but we wanted to highlight, with the addition of new people coming in all the time, that it's important to know that we have to not assume that the workforce is up to speed on all aspects of the job without having specific training. So we wanted to highlight that. And also reinforce in-place policies addressing harassment and bullying and demand a culture of inclusion. That item was reworded from what you saw before. It's because we had input that from several sources that at times new employees in particular are harassed to some extent by the seasoned workforce, and we want to make sure that that doesn't happen because it affects the continuity of the workforce and the desire to have a career at Hanford, and we can't accept that. So it's an important item. And C, F, optimize the RAD worker dress undress environmental procedures to improve productivity. We wrestled with that a little bit and landed on these words finally, because dressing and undressing takes time, and that time limits the time for actual cleanup work to be done. And the RAD worker is it has to follow procedures. So we would like the procedures to be optimized to improve productivity if there's any way possible to do that. For example, newer or more convenient dress and undress facilities, availability of rad techs at all sites all the time or whenever needed. Those sorts of things are efficiency related, and we think that there's some room for improvement there.
Shelley?
Thank you. I just had one suggestion, and that's in the first sentence on workforce issues. I would say develop a comprehensive defense in-depth plan for EPA ecology and the general public. Because really what we need to know is that there is it's been modeled and understood just how many people are going to be required for each job to ensure that waste processing is not stopped because of lack of trained workforce.
Now, is it comprehensive defense in depth, or did I hear you incorrectly?
No, it's defense in depth plan. Yeah.
Okay.
So a dash after defense, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I would put a comma after comprehensive. Comprehensive defense in depth plan for EPA.
Okay, I think that's fair.
And if that's too much information, you can take it out. But I think it's important to understand what those needs are, because that's what we'll be lobbying for with money, if with the budget, is ensuring that we've got everything in place to continue.
That is true. I think it looks fine.
Thank you.
Next item, ISAB, Ruth. That's the worker safety issue I mentioned earlier. Prioritize Hanford worker safety. We feel that it is being done. We're not criticizing DOE in this regard, but we wanted to keep it on the forefront of attention from our perspective as well as DOE's. So that item is there. ISAC, expanded HAB and public involvement. We had a similar item last year, and the wording is fairly similar. Number one, sub-item 1, fully fund the board to hold up to 6 board meetings, with one of those being a regional meeting. What we took out of there, the version you saw before, was make sure you fully fund the IM teams as well. And there's no need. There's 2 things. We said to fully fund IM teams and fully fund all committee meetings. All committee meetings now are not limited according to the latest facilitation contract with DOE. So all committee meetings will be supported. And the IM teams don't require facilitation support. And so it only involves board membership involvement. And so we took that phrase out. So I think the wording there it reflects the current situation. Number 2, expand and fund regional public engagement, which includes meetings. Reinstate travel reimbursement for board alternates. Frankly, I think that's not going to receive a lot of favor from DOE at this point, but we thought it was important to list. We've said that earlier too, and we still support board alternates being funded in all board activities. And number 4, invest in technological improvements. And we listed, including board meetings to continue to grow the capacity for virtual and technology assisted participation. We know for example, we're recording this meeting, and we're recording all formal committee and full board meetings. So would like to grow the capacity to be able to do that. Also consider a hybrid format for all future meetings, where some are you can handle remote and as well as in-person meetings. If there's anything unique about that, we haven't really done much of that. I would like the technological improvements to be able to do that more effectively. And reduce barriers and increase access of virtual tours. I think DOE is on the road for that. They've done a few of those now, as I recall. One at least I've seen, and they're pretty good. They're pretty good tools. They probably save money, and they also give you a little more in-depth level of information. So they're good for that. ISAD Hanford funding support. This is an interesting one. You've seen this one before, and I don't think we've changed it much. Provide an engineering operational plan for public view that defines how the existing assumptions of the Hanford funding will be utilized to support both the operation of DFLAW and also all of the other significant activities for cleanup at Hanford. Our concern there is that we recognize that operation for DFLAW is going to draw off a lot of the cleanup money from the overall annual budget. We want to make sure that there is funding, adequate funding, for the most important items for cleanup and the rest of the site as well. We don't want only to focus on DFLAW. And finally, milestone, milestone support. Ensure that the cleanup mission is fully funded to meet TPA milestones in addition to ORP funding. This again was a distinction on funding. The ORP is getting the vast majority. It's getting the majority of funding now, and we suspect the vast majority of funding once we get into more operational waste disposal activities. So we're emphasizing the fact, without getting into the details of the funding, because we can't, that the necessary activities for both areas are going to be funded by DOE.
Chris.
So that's pretty much it. Any other comments, general comments, thoughts?
Yeah,
Yes.
I have one. I'm wondering if ISAE move that up as the last sentence in ISAD, because what we say in ISAD is this: utilized to support both DFLAW operation and also the many other significant Hanford cleanup activities. Well, that kind of covers RL cleanup mission to some degree, but what if we said, left that just as it is and said, new sentence, in particular, ensure the RL cleanup mission is fully funded to meet TPA milestones in addition to ORP funding, and then do away with ISAE.
Okay, that yeah, that covers the same issue. Is there any benefit in combining it versus keeping it separate?
Well, except that the sentence before that kind of already covers it. We say, and also the many other significant Hanford cleanup activities, but that would really cover RL activities.
Susan?
Yeah, to me,
I mean, I'm good with it either way. It's just, I think it's a little bit redundant.
okay, to me, they're two different things. D and E are two different things. The first sentence on D starts off with that DOE provide an engineering operational plan for public review. And E is all about funding. And I've been out at the site in ORP and everything for a long time. I tend to agree that we need to keep E in there because it's easier to quantify the ORP funding. So RL gets kind of lost in the shuffle sometimes, politically. But to me, D, like I said, that whole first sentence lays out that we're telling them to develop a plan, provide a plan for public review. So that's not funding it talking about. So I think we should
get into funding.
Is the importance the plan or making sure that RL doesn't become the ugly stepchild?
They're both.
Yeah, I can see both ways, but I tend to think that E should be kept separate.
It's a really big issue. It always has been. It's what led to the division of RL and, to being ORP being established.
Oh, that was a fun year.
That was a fun year, yes. But it's always been all about funding. And so, yeah.
So you're right. I guess to follow on what Susan's saying, the E item, last item, is really asking DOE, please ensure that it's fully funded, both RL and ORP, basically.
Yeah, the entire Hanford site.
Right. And the D, the Hanford funding support item, is more like it was pointed out, it's asking for a plan that defines how the assumptions for funding are going to be used, or going to be made. It's similar. I agree it's similar, but I think the focus is a little bit different, Chris, to me.
Okay, we are at 2. What else do we need to cover?
That's it. Chris, if you accept that to keep them separate, I think I guess we'd have to ask for approval of the overall approval of BCC to advance this forward in this version to the full HAB.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, what you could do also is on E, where it says the title is mission support, just change it to Hanford site funding.
No, it says milestone support, but
I know, but if you just changed it to Hanford site funding, because that's what it's talking about.
okay. I think that's okay. Okay, as we point out, we're kind of in overtime now, and you don't get paid extra for this. Could you, Ruth, how do you want to take this by response to the chat?
Yeah, let's just in chat, if you're good with it, give me a yes or an okay or something like that. If you have an objection, this is now the time to wave your hand, stomp your feet, say something.
And Ruth, since I cannot access chat, you can take my acceptance.
Hey, we even have somebody who said they were happy.
Whoa, man, that's a success then.
So I'm seeing yeses and okays and happy and agree and like all sorts of good work. You're in danger of getting compliments.
Well,
with exclamation points. So
it was a great IM team. I really appreciate it. And also the BCC had a lot of constructive comments, not only today, but during the committee week. I really appreciate that. So thank you all. And Ruth, do I need to send you something to ask you to forward it next week to the board?
Yeah, we have it recorded that you just asked me to do it. So
okay.
We'll that good.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, let's off to Josh. We've got an EIC call here in 28 minutes. So
yeah.
That's
So I'll let you all go. Thank you very much again, and I'm sure we'll be talking down the line here.
all right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. You bet.
Thanks, Tom.
You
Bye.
bet. So.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Yep.
Tom.
Bye-bye,
Thanks
everyone.
all.